Welcome to the Crawlcast. I'm your host, George Krawczak, and today we are talking about why Saudi Arabia bought EA Games. I'm sure everyone's seen Saudi Arabia spent $55 billion on buying EA Games. So today I'm going to discuss why they did that, and it's mainly for two reasons. Number one, to diversify their income, and then number two, to enhance their public image. So I'll break this video down into two parts. And if you like this type of content, make sure to hit that subscribe button like it owes you money. Now let's get started. So here's the first reason, and this is a little bit less of the main reason. I'll get to the main reason, but a little bit later. But the first reason is to diversify their investments. So if you look at Saudi Arabia right now, they basically the only thing that they make money from is selling oil. That's it. That's basically their main export is oil. So when you have a giant gaming company like EA, when they make Battlefield and The Sims, they make Madden Football and FIFA Soccer and all these games, that helps bring in additional income to EA. Because if you look at the world, it's not going to happen anytime soon, but in like 30, 40, 50 years, when the world really starts transitioning away from oil and onto more electric vehicles and solar powered things, then Saudi Arabia is going to lose a very large portion of their income. And so that's kind of one big reason why they did it, is because they want to diversify. Because games like Madden and FIFA and The Sims, they'll always be there. Like they might evolve into different different consoles instead of just Xbox and PlayStation. There might be something new there, or there might be a VR element, but those games will almost always stand the test of time. Whereas oil, again, their chief way of making money, is going to disappear sooner or later. And so that is option number one. And then here's the big option that I'll start getting into, is to enhance their public image. So Saudi Arabia is really working on enhancing their public image. That's why it's so called like sports washing, where Saudi Arabia doesn't seem like it might be the greatest place. Like, for example, they treat women as second-class citizens. You know, they're not allowed to show their shoulders. Or you see like how they treat gays, or like they throw gays off of buildings and it's illegal to be gay. And so they're viewed as not the greatest place on earth. And so what they're doing is throwing tons of money at places, trying to say, no, look, we're good. Look at this. Where, for example, they just had that huge comedy show of some of the world's greatest comedians, where you had like Bill Burr, Dave Chappelle, Jimmy Carr, Kevin Hart, and a lot of those guys were like, wow, these are amazing comedians. And so if a play is, would a comedian go to a place that's that bad? The answer is yes, for tons and tons of money. But that's what Saudi Arabia wants to say. Like, look, all these guys like Bill Burr and Dave Chappelle are here. So this means we can't be that bad. Or look at what they do with the WWE. They spent $250 million to have WrestleMania in Saudi Arabia next year. They spent $100 million to get the Royal Rumble there this year, saying, "Hey, look, we have wrestling. Would a horrible country have wrestling that a lot of people like?" And that's why they're also spending lots of money on, for example, they started their own golf league. They bought a soccer team, and they're starting to do a flag football tournament where they're going to have all the best NFL players. Like I think I saw Christian McCaffrey, Justin Jefferson. They're even taking Tom Brady's coming out of retirement to do this flag football competition in Saudi Arabia. So they're basically saying, hey, look, with all these athletes and all these things that you like, they're being hosted in Saudi Arabia. If a country was that bad, would they be hosted in Saudi Arabia? Kind of to excuse the fact where it's like, hey, if you're getting offered several $1,000,000 to do what you do from the Saudi Arabian government, would you do it? The answer is probably yes, because some of these comedians and WWE, for example, like WWE's biggest profit-making show is WrestleMania, and WrestleMania makes between $15 and $20 million a year. Keep in mind, Saudi Arabia is spending $250 million a year, so that's just saying, hey, the Saudi Arabian government, since it's a crown prince and they own everything, they basically have unlimited money supply, and they can have these events here to try to enhance their public image. So that's what they're doing with EA, is saying, if a country is that bad, would they be giving you the soccer game you really like, or the football game you really like, or the Sims game, or the Battlefront with Star Wars. If a country is that bad, what do you be getting all these things that you like from them? So that's also, so that's one part of it. And then also, I think they like kind of it applies public pressure to kind of build a closer relationship with Saudi Arabia and with the United States, which I understand there could be good things and could be bad things. Like, for example, China. A lot of these companies rely on China for cheap products. That's why, your iPhone, there's some like Chinese slave labor that is making, $5 an hour to build your iPhone. And so now, for example, if you have tariff China, a lot of products that Americans like, their price rises. So that kind of closes the relationship between the U.S. and China, where, hey, a lot of people like cheaper Chinese products, so the U.S. keep relying on China. I think the Saudi Arabian government's trying to do a similar thing where it's like, hey, a lot of people love these games, so if you tariff Saudi Arabia, or if Saudi Arabia and U.S. are kind of going at each other, the Saudi Arabian government might take these games away, and which will again hurt and apply pressure to the politicians to kind of side with Saudi Arabia on certain issues. So again, that's kind of the goal of Saudi Arabia, is to both change their public image, make more money. Maybe you can say it's a genuine attempt to modernize. I find that very hard to believe, but there's a shot there. And so that's kind of the main reason why they bought Electronic Arts. And so one last thing about this deal is a lot of people are saying, oh, look, now that Saudi Arabia is funding it, is that mean these games are going to get any better? The truth is probably not, because they all announced that EA CEO, a lot of the EA staffers are going to stay the same, except for they're going to try to kind of go to robots for certain items of EA services. So basically, it just means that everything's going to run the exact same, except for it'll just, instead of the money going to the shareholders of EA, it's just going to the Saudi Arabian government. And when I say talked about them going computerized, that just means if you're gonna have an issue, like for example customer service and stuff, that's all going AI. So that'll just be a bigger pain in the butt if you have a problem with EA games and you just want customer service. So that is the one negative. But overall, if you like the way they're running, it's gonna be exactly the same. If you hate the way they're running, unfortunately, it's gonna be exactly the same. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below, like what you think of this deal, if you think it's good, if you think it's bad. And overall, like I said, I don't think much is going to change. It's just a new way of Saudi Arabia making money. The US and Saudi Arabia have at least a decent enough relationship where I don't think it'll impact any of the games now being owned by a foreign entity. And then finally, this is the big thing to me. This tells me the likelihood that Saudi Arabia is going to buy WWE just increased by like 1,000%, because I always thought, I'm like, okay, Saudi Arabia, they might not be interested in running a wrestling company and doing all this stuff with WWE, and that's why they're just paying exorbitant amounts to them. Like, for example, like I said, they just spent $350 million on 2 pay-per-views, and now that's changed, where they're looking to diversify their investment, and WWE is a huge money-making thing. Although it will be a little bit weird, because how do they kind of treat women? Because the Saudi Arabia shows in WWE always feel weird, because the women have to wear like full like suits and can't show their shoulders and can basically only show their face. So they all look the same, except for here's one wearing a pink full body suit, here's one wearing a black full body suit. And so it's going to be really weird, and we'll see like the test run of the Royal Rumble, but like when 10 women are in the ring at the same time, you're like, oh, they all look the same, except for one's wearing pink, one's wearing black, one's wearing yellow, and I think it's going to be hard to tell them apart. So I think that really increases the chances of Saudi Arabia buying WWE. So like I said, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you like this type of content, make sure to hit that subscribe button like it owes you money, and I'll see you on the next one.